So when you're beholden to an ideology, you look at data points, anything in your epistemic landscape or your factual landscape. You look at data points. Every single thing you do works in service to the ideology. And so we have created a system, and we have no one to blame for this but ourselves. We've created a system in which ideologues are educational administrators. Ideologues have been teaching our kids. Ideologues are giving out those credentials, teaching certificates to teach in K through 12 systems. And so we've indoctrinated a generation of people into the ideology. So now once you understand that, and they've corrupted entire bodies of literature. So once you understand that, you can understand why everybody's called far right. You can understand why all this terminology keeps detonating in society, like equity, diversity, inclusion, belonging. You can understand the meanings of these words as they've come from academia, they've been taught to our children, and then it seeps out into the whole culture. But by the way, just parenthetically, when I started talking about this, people thought I was a lunatic. That was the problem with the grievance studies thing. It was done way too early. If we had waited, 5-6 years later, when the world was ripe for it, it would have made a much bigger impact.
Do you think people are more ready to hear and believe that this is going on?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think there's no question that people know, especially the left knows that there's something wrong. People who listen to NPR, for example, it's a national public radio, know that there's something wrong. They're not quite sure what it is. Gender being non-binary, a spectrum, children, girls who are 16 should have mastectomies. Boys should have their testicles removed if they feel a certain way, and 80% of those. Andrew Doyle writes about this in the New Puritans as the Tavistock Clinic has come out. He's going to be one of your guests in your show. Most of these kids are gay. Most of these kids have autism, or so sane people realize that there's something dramatically wrong, something dramatically not just practically or instrumentally wrong, but morally wrong, something that's so corrupt and corrosive that it makes otherwise really good, decent people act in utterly horrific ways.
So to put this in a nutshell, we've got an in-group, which is academia. It's one of many in-groups, but it's one particular one that's quite important in our society, in which people have long been incentivized to put out more and more out there theories that correspond with woke ideology, and they get hired and promoted for doing so. And in that pursuit, many, potentially 10%, are corrupt and plagiarizing to get status within that in-group.
No, it's a little more complicated than that. So you have bodies of literature that are devoted to promoting certain ideas about the world, certain ways that you should view the world. And then those ideas that go in peer-reviewed journals are used to formulate public policy decisions. And then you have groups of people who have similar beliefs publishing in those journals. Those people are academicians. They're in the academy. They teach our kids that. They get rewarded for publishing. 7 papers in 7 years is tenure, which is a job for life. They get rewarded for publishing. And so you have a system that is almost made up whole cloth. You have a system that has the trappings of legitimacy, but itself is captured. The whole thing has been captured by an ideology. And anyone who dares to speak out against it will suffer punishment. They'll suffer the bias response teams, which I think are 220 universities. You can report someone for even having wrong think. You can report someone for, basically you can report someone for anything that they want, anything that you want. And there's very little recourse to this, and it is an extraordinary theft of time. I mean, I've been investigated, I don't even know how many times. It's just an extraordinary theft of time.
There are people at colleges. I've got a friend who's actually responsible for that at one of the universities in the UK, who is supposed to look just at plagiarism. So I do believe there must be some people in academia still who really do want to root this out. And I've spoken to that person. They were saying, we've got difficulties now with ChatGPT and trying to work out who's plagiarizing and what's going on. But they really are attentive. But
I don't believe that.
There's got to be some people.
I think that's false. In fact, I can demonstrate to you that that's false. In the United States law, there have been 220 cases of plagiarism. If what you said was true, And even if I was wrong and it's 1%, which is no possible way that it's 1%, that would be tens of thousands of dissertations. How many dissertations have been shown to be plagiarized in the last 3 years? Yeah, so that can't be true. Unless you want to claim that the actual instance of plagiarism is 0.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
Which no sane person would possibly claim that.
Is it often made public? Again, my friend was telling me there were a few people who have been called in and they've had these difficult conversations. And
yeah, okay. So I'll revise that statement. So yes, there have been people whose dissertations have been found to be plagiarized, and they have removed them. So I rescind that. But nowhere near. So if that is at an institution, I would like, and you don't have to say the name of the person in the institution, but they should have found something. So what have they been doing with all that time? Anyway, I call BS on that.
Yeah. Well, that friend in particular has been finding some people, but look, you're talking about a systemic, huge thing. There's always going to be good people working within that.
Yeah. Again, the problem in this conversation is I don't know what those numbers are. But the good news is, so here's the problem. The problem is that there are plagiarism checkers that you can submit a paper to. One of them, big one, is called Turnitin. But those are not that accurate. There are false positives and false negatives. And the problem is, the fact of the matter is, ultimately, if you're going to accuse someone of plagiarism, that is an extraordinarily serious charge.
Yeah.
You have to have, like they did with Claudine Gay, you have to put like Rufo did, you have to put the passages right next to each other. And the bottom line, at this level of technology in 2024, that is just a human activity where you have to put them together and check. The other problem is, you don't want people to get away with it because it passes the plagiarism checker. You want to make sure you catch all of them. So there are people who are writing these placed on top of a ChatGPT interface that they want to search dissertations by the thousands in batches. And I'm told, I don't have any evidence of this, but I'm told that Jill Biden's dissertation is among those.
Well, we will see then. That's interesting. One thing I don't understand, just as I'm not an academic myself. I did an undergraduate degree in English. And I remember that one of the hard parts was actually finding quotes. And I guess maybe it's different as you get further into academia, but isn't it easier for these people to just put quotes marks around it and say, look, I put a reference. That's brilliant.
Yep.
So why wouldn't they do that?
Well, ask someone who's plagiarized.
Do you have an inkling? Like, why didn't Claudine Gay, she would have got just as high marks, I presume, or grades from putting the quotation marks in.
Why did she plagiarize her acknowledgements? That's even more crazy.
Just lazy?
I honestly don't know. I mean, it actually makes you look better if you cite something because it makes it look like you've done the work.
Yeah.
So I can't answer that question. I don't know.
Just wanted to pass it off as her own material.
Evidently.
Do you think this all leads to what we talked about at the beginning with DEI, what we talked about with corruption and plagiarism, what happened? I know we've spoken about it to death, so we don't have to go into too much detail about the 3 college presidents. I believe only one of them is still in the job, who was
MIT.
saying that it wasn't bullying to say that to call for genocide. Genocide of Jews.
Oh, Jewicide works. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what it was. Yeah.
Well, I guess a question that occurred to me, or has occurred to me, that you made me think of again is, given that the people participate in the ideology that is inherently meritocratic, that looks at race as the primary consideration of anything, unless it's trans, which has a different status. I have been told that there are concerns that people of a certain identity group were more likely to plagiarize than other people. Now, I don't know if that's true, but if that is true, then it presents yet another complication. Then what do you do?
Well, you just have to take each individual case, don't you? That's the sensible thing to do.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's any sane person would do that. If you plagiarize, it doesn't. This is not complicated. If you cheated to obtain your credentials, okay, as a minimum, you lose your job. Now, whether or not you should lose your degree, we can have that. I personally think you should, but we can have that conversation about whether or not you should retain your PhD. But I predicted that within 8 months, the default assumption will be, unless it has been proven that you have not plagiarized, your degree is illegitimate. If the numbers that I'm talking about are correct, 7 to 9%.